Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're specifically going to talk about why Dungeons & Dragons absolutely crushes non-Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing games, and just continues to, and really is in a league of its own. It has no competitors at the individual game level, literally zero, right? It only competes with the entire industry combined, and usually takes the entire industry and kicks it into the dirt, right? And says, "Hey, I'm king of the mountain. Nobody else matters," right? And the reason why I want to talk about this day is not to down these other indie games. It's so that So one, I'm not wishing upon the downfall of the indie game market. I am frustrated with it, and I think very little of it, right? Because it continues to do the same nonsense and expect a different outcome, right? And so it never even here's basically if you have a condition, right? In order to fix that condition, you need to diagnose the problem. And indie tabletop role-playing games and basically all non-Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing games, they can't even diagnose right, so they have no way to fix the problem. And I actually want there to be competition for Dungeons & Dragons. I want there to be, but doing these other non-D&D non-Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing games, the way they're going, they don't even have a hope of ever catching up because they don't know what the problem is. But I want to talk about the problem today, and we're going to get there. All right, so today I'm going to talk about Ghost 2021. It's a brand new television show that is on Paramount Plus. It gets about 5 million viewers a week, right? And it is a phenomenally good show, right? That nobody's watching, really. And you're like, oh, you said 5 million people. Yeah, that's the kind of viewership bad Netflix shows get, right? Actually they've already talked about it. Like, a Netflix show can get like 100 million viewers. Like, it's ridiculous the amount. Like, that's 20 times the number I just talked to you about. But in the D&D world, right, 5 million viewers is like right now. Our last metric is that there's about 11 million Dungeons & Dragons DMs and players in the world, right? So if you got one show that's getting 5 million viewers in the media world, those kind of numbers are terrible. But in the Dungeons & Dragons world, they're spectacular, right? So let's talk about Ghost 2021. First of all, Ghost 2021, spoilers for the entire series at this point, right? All right, let's go forward. So Ghost 2021 is this brilliant story that just dropped on Paramount Plus. It just finished episode 9, and there's 2 more episodes that are going to drop. Guess what? Ghost 2021, which is a story about a woman who inherits a haunted mansion, okay, in New York State, and then becomes able to see the ghosts in her haunted house, living there with her ghost blind husband, right? So he can't see the ghosts. He can't talk to the ghosts, right? So he can't communicate with the ghosts. She can, right? And they're turning this mansion into a bed and breakfast, okay? Now, episode 8 of this show, the title of the episode is D ampersand the symbol D. D&D. It is literally the title of the show, right? Of that episode of the show, right? And then they show the ghost blind husband is trying to play Dungeons and Dragons through streaming to keep up with his old group, but because all streaming games suck, his streaming game sucks, and he gets they are his old group, right? Who they moved away from like Iowa or something. No, they moved away from their home in New York City into into New York State, into a less populous area where their haunted mansion exists, right? So here's what happens, right? So basically, you have this situation, and so the ghost blind husband, he wants to play Dungeons. He's a Dungeons & Dragons player. He played with his old group, right? And they're like, hey, we don't want you we can actually replace you with a table player, right? We don't need to set up we don't need to do all the same work that CNN does to like contact a reporter in a war zone, right, in order to bring you in as a player, right? So he loses his seat at the table in his Dungeons and Dragons game, which honestly, that's a statement about D&D right now. I think like there was a lot of like, we all pretended that D&D streamed games mattered. They don't matter now, right? Now, of course, Critical Role's game does matter, but generally streamed games don't matter. And the reason why is like before March 2020, we all had this idea that, oh yeah, technology is going to be a big part of education's future. And then like when we went to online school, everybody was like, this is an absolute suckfest. This is horrible. And let's stop pretending that educating any child online rather than in person will ever work. Like, that it's done. Like, call it, right? Like, and so Ghost 2021, the husband is, the entire episode is called D&D. He loses his D&D seat because he needs to be a streamed player rather than a physical table player. I'm 100% all for that, right? I will take a physical player over a stream player any day of the week. In fact, it doesn't work. It's really sucky. I've been at tables where they have physical players and stream players at the same table. I feel like all that really is people try it when somebody goes far away, and then they find out 2 weeks later this is sucky for everybody. It's sucky for everybody on both ends, and the reality is, virtual presence sucks. Like, it just, let's do what Gary said. Let's gather at the table and play, right? Like, so then the ghosts are very interested in Dungeons and Dragons, and so the wife creates a way for the ghost to play Dungeons and Dragons with her husband, and she essentially serves as a medium for them. Now, I'll tell you right now, I was highly interested in the idea that a dungeon master would be trying to run a game for a creature that didn't have the same perceptions and abilities as a regular human. Right? These ghosts, right? But then had struggles to do it, right? Now, the reality is, it works out. And basically, the wife sits at the table and tells her ghost blind husband what the ghosts are saying, and the ghosts can hear the DM, and they can hear the ghost blind DM and the ghost seeing wife, right? So, and so they make it work, right? But here's the kicker, right? Here's where we land, all right? If you're running Dungeons and Dragons, the world promotes your game every single day on 100 shows that name check D&D. If you are playing Old School Essentials, there's not a show in the world that name checks your useless, like subpar, no weight carrying game. OSE doesn't matter. Don't waste your story, your energy, your players' time, your time on games that don't matter, right? Put your content, which is amazing, on platforms that will withstand the weight. Dungeons & Dragons will withstand the weight of everything your player group needs. OSE, DCC, Five Torches Deep, Torchbearer, Lamentations the Flame Princess. None of these games have the strength to hold your story up. They will break under the weight of it if your game is actually good, right? If you got dense, meaty content, right? Don't waste it on a game that doesn't matter and and the world is never going to help you draw players, right? If you're on Dungeons & Dragons, for half the shows that are coming out will name check D&D and promote your game. Every time, like, your Dungeons & Dragons, people go, oh, I know what Dungeons & Dragons is because I saw it on Ghosts, because I saw it on Southside, because I saw it on True Detective, because I saw it on, and the list goes on and 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 on, right? And it just gets longer every day. And every single one of these other non-Dungeons & Dragons games, right? They never catch up because they don't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do to be a better game. But Dungeons & Dragons is beyond it. Dungeons & Dragons is a cultural icon that gets free advertising every single day from 50 shows that name check it and more shows that are actually shows and movies that are name checking it every day right? Giving your game juice if you're on the D&D side, right? But these other games, they just don't even know what their goal is. They need to become cultural icons. They don't even know it, so they have no possibility of ever achieving it, right? So that's what I'm saying is, I don't want to have you stop playing non-D&D games to be cruel. I don't want your time wasted. That's the issue, right? And if your games are not going anywhere on DCC, OSE, and if all you're ever doing is just achieving a fun time for the people at your table, it's because you're on the wrong platform. So get on the right platform. That's my opinion. Love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.